Commander James Hawthorne cursed under his breath as he ducked behind a twisted piece of hull plating. The Centauri space station's emergency lights cast an eerie red glow across the debris-strewn corridor. His mission to investigate suspected weapons trafficking had gone sideways the moment he'd stepped aboard. A blast of plasma fire scorched the wall above his head. Through the cacophony of alarms and weapons fire, he heard the distinctive sound of Drachnid combat boots approaching. The station's alleged routine inspection had turned into an ambush, leaving him cut off from his extraction point. "Central, this is Hawthorne," he whispered into his comm unit. "Station is compromised. Multiple hostile forces. Request immediate." Static filled his earpiece. Of course they were jamming communications. Movement caught his eye, a figure in an iridescent command uniform darting between the shadows. Not Drachnid. The being's movements were too fluid, too precise. Through his tactical visor, he caught glimpses of silvery skin and elegant features. A Lasarian. The supposedly neutral species rarely ventured this far from their core systems. The Lasarian officer was clearly trying to avoid the Drachnid forces as well. Interesting. James tracked their movement, noting how they checked corners and maintained cover. This was no civilian, they moved with military precision. A Drachnid war cry echoed through the corridor. The Lasarian spun, raising an energy pistol, but they were outnumbered. James made a split-second decision. He activated his stealth field and moved. The first Drachnid went down silently, James's vibroblade finding the gap in their armor. The second managed a startled grunt before a precise shot from the Lasarian dropped them. The third raised their weapon, but caught between James's blade and the Lasarian's fire, they never stood a chance. When the last Drachnid fell, James and the Lasarian found themselves at an impasse, weapons trained on each other. Up close, he could see the delicate patterns that traced across their silvery skin, the subtle shimmer of their uniform marking them as high-ranking. "You move well for a human," they said in flawless standard English, their voice carrying an almost musical quality. "You shoot well for a diplomat," James countered, noting the ceremonial markings on their uniform that definitely didn't match their combat skills. A slight smile touched their lips. "I am General Naira Velos of the Lasarian Defense Force. And you are clearly not the merchant you pretend to be. Commander James Hawthorne, Earth Special Forces. No point maintaining his cover now. Want to tell me why a Lasarian general is sneaking around a compromised Centauri station? Perhaps for the same reason an Earth commander is here. The weapons being moved through this station, they're not simple plasma rifles. Someone is trading in planetary-scale weapons tech." James lowered his blade slightly. "The kind that could destabilize an entire sector. The kind that already has." Naira's expression darkened. 3 Lasarian colonies have gone dark in the past month. Official channels claim pirate activity, but the damage patterns don't match. James finished. He'd seen the reports, though Earth intelligence hadn't connected them to weapons trafficking yet. The station shuddered, emergency klaxons changing pitch. "Warning, core containment failing. Station-wide evacuation ordered." Naira checked a device on her wrist. "They're scuttling the station to cover their tracks. We have 15 minutes at most. My extraction point's cut off. Yours? Sealed by Drachnid forces." She gave him an appraising look. "However, I know a maintenance shaft that leads to the diplomatic hangar. If we work together." James weighed his options quickly. His mission parameters didn't account for this situation, but the potential intelligence value of a Lasarian general, not to mention the weapons trafficking data, was too valuable to lose. "Lead the way, General." They moved through the station like shadows, complementing each other's movements as if they'd trained together for years. James watched their rear while Naira navigated the maze of maintenance tunnels. They encountered 2 more Drachnid patrols, dispatching them with silent efficiency. The diplomatic hangar was mercifully clear when they arrived, though signs of combat marked the walls. A sleek Lasarian shuttle waited, its engines already humming with pre-flight sequences. "I assume you have sensitive data to retrieve?" Naira asked as she worked the shuttle's security controls. "Computer Core, Section 12. You?" "The same. Their arrogance in using a single secure location will be their undoing." The shuttle's hatch opened with a soft hiss. "We have 7 minutes before core breach. Enough time, if we hurry." James nodded, already moving. "Race you there." Her laughter followed him down the corridor, a surprisingly warm sound in the chaos of the dying station. Neither of them could have known then how this chance encounter would change not just their lives, but the course of human-alien relations forever. The data retrieval from the Centauri station's computer core had been a success, but it came with complications. James watched through the shuttle's viewport as the station imploded behind them, its structural integrity finally giving way to the cascade of system failures. Beside him in the pilot's seat, Naira's fingers danced across the controls, expertly navigating through the debris field. 3 vessels on intercept course, she announced, her tone remaining remarkably calm. "Drachnid signatures." James studied the tactical display. "They're trying to box us in. Pushing us toward the asteroid belt." "Good." A slight smile played across Naira's features. "The Lasarian shuttle may look delicate, but it has a few surprises." "Strap in, Commander." The shuttle dove into the asteroid field, its sleek form weaving between massive rocks with impossible grace. James felt his grip tightening on the armrests as Naira executed maneuvers that should have torn a ship this size apart. The pursuing vessels tried to match their course but quickly fell behind, unable to navigate the treacherous field with the same precision. "Impressive flying," James admitted, studying her profile. The iridescent patterns on her skin seemed to shift with the changing light of nearby gas giants. "But they'll have reinforcements waiting on the other side." "Who said we're going to the other side?" Naira adjusted their course slightly, heading deeper into the field. "There's an old mining outpost hidden in one of the larger asteroids. A remnant from before the Lasarian Drachnid War. It's not on any current star charts." James raised an eyebrow. "Convenient. You seem very prepared for this type of situation, General." "In my position, one learns to maintain contingencies." She glanced at him. "Does this make you uncomfortable, Commander?" "Just trying to figure out if I've jumped from the frying pan into the fire." Their pursuers had fallen far behind now, their signals growing weaker on the tactical display. Naira guided the shuttle toward a particularly large asteroid, easily twice the size of Earth's moon. As they drew closer, James noticed subtle irregularities in its surface, too regular to be natural. The outpost was designed to be invisible to standard scans, Naira explained as they approached what appeared to be a solid rock face. "The entrance only appears when..." The asteroid's surface shimmed briefly, revealing a hangar entrance that swallowed their shuttle whole. Internal lighting strips flickered to life as they landed, illuminating a space that clearly hadn't seen use in years. "Welcome to Haven Station," Naira said, powering down the shuttle systems. "We should be safe here while we analyze the data we retrieved." The outpost's life support systems hummed to life as they explored, showing remarkable preservation despite years of abandonment. James noted defensive turret placements and shield generators. This was more than a simple mining operation. This was a forward operating base, he observed as they entered what appeared to be a command center. "During the war?" Naira nodded, beginning to interface with the station's systems. "One of several. Most were destroyed or abandoned during the conflict. This one I kept operational. Sometimes the official channels aren't enough to maintain peace." Speaking of official channels, James activated his encrypted communicator, but found only static. "We're completely cut off out here." "That's rather the point. Naira pulled up a holographic display, beginning to sort through the stolen data. The station's shielding blocks all standard communications. We can send targeted burst transmissions if necessary, but for now, perhaps it's better if both our governments maintain plausible deniability about our activities. James approached the display, watching as streams of encrypted data scrolled past. You trust me enough to bring me to your secret base, but not enough to tell me what you suspect about these weapons? Naira's hands stilled over the controls. Trust is a complicated matter, Commander. Especially between our species. The Lasarian High Command believes humans are too aggressive, too unpredictable to be trusted with certain information. But I've studied your people. Your history. Your capacity for violence is matched only by your capacity for compassion. She turned to face him fully, her silver eyes intense. The weapons being trafficked through that station? They're based on Lasarian technology. Technology that was supposed to have been destroyed after the war. Someone in my government is working with the Drachnids, and they're testing these weapons on isolated colonies. Why tell me this? Because I've seen the casualty reports from those colonies. Humans, Lysarians, even Drachnid civilians, whoever is behind this doesn't discriminate in their targets. And because... She hesitated, seeming to choose her words carefully. Because there's something about the weapon's energy signature that seems specifically calibrated to human physiology. James felt a chill run down his spine. They're developing anti-human weapons? Among other things. The data we recovered should tell us more, but... The station's proximity alert suddenly blared to life. Naira rushed to the sensors, her expression darkening. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. Drachnid signatures, but there's something wrong with their energy patterns. James looked at the tactical display and felt his blood run cold. The ship's signatures were fluctuating wildly, as if their power cores were unstable. Or as if they were carrying weapons that defied normal physics. I think, he said grimly, we're about to get a first-hand demonstration of those weapons. Naira's hand found his arm, the touch sending an unexpected current through him. Commander. James. If we don't survive what's coming, you should know. The first impact against the asteroid's shields cut off her words, and the hidden outpost plunged into emergency lighting as their sanctuary became a battlefield. The Haven Station's shields held against the first barrage, but the impacts left James and Naira scrambling to reach the defense control center. Emergency lights pulsed in rhythm with each devastating hit, casting shifting shadows through the corridors. These shields weren't designed to withstand this kind of firepower, Naira called out as they ran, her silver hair seeming to glow in the dim light. The crystalline matrix is already showing signs of degradation. James accessed a nearby weapons locker, quickly assessing their options. How many defensive systems are still operational? 6 turret batteries, but they're running on backup power. We'd need to. She stopped abruptly, her eyes widening at something on her wrist display. James, look at this energy reading. He moved closer, studying the complex patterns of energy emanating from the attacking vessels. The wavelengths seemed to shift and mutate in impossible ways, defying known physics. It's like they're trying to create some kind of resonance cascade. Not trying. Succeeding. Naira's fingers flew over the controls, bringing up more detailed scans. These weapons don't just destroy targets, they alter the fundamental forces holding matter together. That's why the colonies went dark. They weren't just attacked, they were unmade. Another impact rocked the station, stronger this time. Warning indicators flashed across multiple screens as systems began to fail. James steadied himself against a console, his mind racing through tactical options. We need to get this data out, he said firmly. If these weapons can do what you're suggesting, both our governments need to know. Agreed, but our communications are still blocked by the station's own shielding. We'd need to lower the defensive screens to send a burst transmission, but that would leave us exposed. James studied the tactical display, noting the pattern of the attacking ships. They're not trying to destroy the station outright. They want something here. Or someone. Naira met his gaze, understanding dawning in her silver eyes. They followed us from the Centauri station. Which means we have a tracker on board. James was already moving, heading back toward their shuttle. Naira fell into step beside him, their movements synchronized by hours of fighting together. The shuttle sat where they'd left it, seemingly undisturbed. But as they approached, James's tactical visor picked up an anomalous energy signature emanating from the engine housing. He moved to investigate, but Naira's hand on his arm stopped him. "Wait," she said softly. "That's a Lasarian tracking device. Advanced military grade. Only 5 people in the defense force have access to them." James turned to her slowly. "Someone in your command structure. Someone who knew I would be at that Centauri station." Her expression hardened. "Someone who wanted to find this outpost." Before James could respond, his combat instincts screamed a warning. He tackled Naira aside as a plasma bolt seared through the space where they'd been standing. They rolled behind a cargo container as more shots filled the air. "Planetary Commander Voss," Naira called out, her voice carrying a mix of anger and resignation. "I should have known." A tall Lasarian male emerged from the shadows, flanked by several heavily armed troops in unmarked armor. His uniform bore the elaborate markings of high command, but there was something wrong about his movements, too rigid, almost mechanical. "General Velos," Voss responded, his voice unnaturally flat. "Your dedication to investigation is admirable, but unfortunately inconvenient. The project cannot be compromised." James felt Naira tense beside him. The weapons tests weren't unauthorized. They're official Defense Force operations. Necessary sacrifices for the greater good. Humanity's expansion must be contained. Their potential for violence makes them too dangerous to allow unfettered growth. Voss raised his hand, and his troops took aim. "The resonance weapons will ensure peace in our time." "Peace through genocide?" Naira's voice shook with rage. "You're supposed to protect our people, not become the very thing we once fought against." James watched the troops' positions, noting something odd about their movements. "Naira," he whispered, "look at their eyes." She glanced at the soldiers, then inhaled sharply. Their eyes had an unnatural glow, their movements becoming more obviously mechanical. "By the stars, they're not just using the weapons. They're being changed by them." "The resonance technology requires adaptation," Voss admitted. His skin seemed to ripple, revealing patches of crystalline growth beneath. "A small price for ultimate control." James's mind raced through the implications. The weapons weren't just tools of destruction, they were transforming their users into something inhuman. The colonies hadn't just been attacks, they had been experiments. "Last chance, Naira," Voss called out. "Join us. Help us guide our species to its next evolution." James felt her hand find his in the shadows, squeezing once. Without words, he knew they were thinking the same thing. The data they'd stolen, the truth about these weapons, it had to get out. Whatever the cost. "You know my answer, Voss," Naira replied, her free hand moving to her belt where James knew she carried a particular type of Lasarian grenade. "Then you'll share humanity's fate." Voss raised his weapon. In the split second before chaos erupted, James caught Naira's eye. A whole conversation passed between them in that look, trust, determination, and something deeper neither of them had time to examine. Then they moved as one, launching into action as the hangar bay erupted into a battlefield where the fate of multiple species hung in the balance. The hangar bay became a storm of plasma fire and shifting shadows as James and Naira split apart, moving in perfect synchronization. The transformed soldiers tracked them with unnatural precision, their crystalline-enhanced bodies glowing with inner light. Naira's grenade arced through the air, but instead of an explosion, it released a pulse of sonic energy that shattered the crystalline growths on the nearest soldiers. They stumbled, their movements becoming erratic. James seized the opportunity, closing the distance to engage in close combat while Naira provided covering fire. "The transformation isn't complete," Naira called out, her shots finding weak points in the soldiers' mutated forms. "There's still organic matter beneath the crystal structure." James ducked under a swing from one of the soldiers, noting how their movements became more mechanical and less coordinated as the fight progressed. "They're losing their humanity, or Lasarian HFY, in this case." Voss remained at the back of the hangar, his body continuing to crystallize as he watched the battle with inhuman detachment. "You cannot stop evolution, Naira. The resonance weapons are merely catalysts for our species' advancement." "This isn't evolution," Naira shot back, vaulting over a cargo container to avoid a barrage of fire. "It's corruption. You're turning our people into weapons." James reached the shuttle, quickly working to remove the tracking device while maintaining awareness of the battle around him. A soldier rushed him, their crystalline arm formed into a blade. He parried with his vibroblade, the impact sending shockwaves up his arm. "The device is linked to their command network," he called to Naira. "If I can access it." "You'll do nothing," Voss interrupted. His voice had taken on a harmonics quality that made James's teeth ache. The commander raised his arm, now completely transformed into crystal, and energy began to gather around him. Naira's eyes widened in recognition. "James, move." The energy blast that followed wasn't plasma or any conventional weapon, it was pure resonance energy that warped the very air it passed through. James dove aside as the blast hit the shuttle, and the vessel didn't so much explode as unravel, its matter breaking down at the subatomic level. "The future cannot be stopped," Voss declared, his voice now a chorus of harmonics. "The human expansion ends here, and a new order begins." But James had seen something in the moment the shuttle disintegrated, a pattern in the chaos. He caught Naira's eye and tapped his tactical visor, then his belt. Her slight nod told him she understood. "You're right about one thing, Voss," James said, slowly standing. "Something does end here." He unclipped a standard-issue EMP grenade from his belt, seemingly useless against biological targets, but Naira was already moving into position. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm us," Voss laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "We are beyond such." James threw the grenade, not at Voss, but at the exact spot where the shuttle had unraveled. The electromagnetic pulse met the lingering resonance energy, and the reaction was immediate. A wave of anti-resonance swept through the hangar, causing the crystalline structures on the transformed soldiers to vibrate and crack. Naira seized the moment, unleashing a barrage of precisely targeted shots that shattered the weakened crystal growths. The soldiers collapsed, their bodies beginning to revert to their original forms. Voss screamed, a sound that contained both rage and fear as his own crystalline shell began to fracture. "What have you done?" "Basic physics," James answered, advancing with his weapon ready. "Every frequency has its counter-frequency. The resonance weapons may alter matter, but they still follow fundamental laws. And those laws," Naira added, moving to flank Voss, "say that what can be done can be undone." But Voss wasn't finished. With a movement too quick to track, he grabbed a fallen soldier's weapon and fired at the hangar's atmospheric containment field. Alarms blared as the field flickered, threatening to expose the bay to vacuum. "If I cannot ascend," Voss declared, his crystalline form cracking further, "then you will all fall with me." James looked at Naira, saw the same determination in her eyes that he felt. Without words, they moved in perfect coordination. As Voss raised his weapon for a final shot, Naira fired at his crystallized arm while James launched himself forward, tackling the commander just as the containment field failed. The vacuum of space began to pull at them, debris flying past as the hangar depressurized. James gripped a support beam with one hand, holding on to Voss with the other as the commander's crystalline form continued to shatter. "The data," Voss gasped, his voice losing its harmonic quality as the transformation began to reverse. "Others, no, coming." Through the chaos, James saw Naira fighting her way to the environmental controls, her silver hair whipping in the artificial wind. She reached the panel, her fingers dancing across the controls as she fought to restore the containment field. The remaining transformed soldiers were breaking free of their crystalline shells, confusion and horror dawning on their organic faces as awareness returned. But in their eyes, James saw the lingering effects of the resonance weapons, changes that might never fully reverse. As Naira finally managed to restore the containment field, James knew this was only the beginning. They had stopped this attempt, but Voss's final words suggested a larger conspiracy. The real diplomatic crisis was just beginning, and the line between ally and enemy was about to become far more complex. Looking at Naira across the now still hangar, surrounded by the aftermath of their battle, James realized their lives had become irrevocably intertwined. Whatever came next, they would face it together, a human and a Lasarian, defying both fate and physics to forge a new path forward. 3 days after the battle in Haven Station, James stood before the combined Earth-Lasarian Emergency Council, his formal uniform feeling stiff after days in tactical gear. Through the chamber's vast windows, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black of space, a reminder of everything at stake. Naira stood beside him, her silver ceremonial armor catching the light as she presented their evidence. The data they'd recovered had revealed a network of conspiracy that reached into both their governments, military officials, politicians, and corporate interests, all drawn to the promise of power that the resonance weapons offered. "The transformation isn't just physical," she explained, projecting images of the affected soldiers. "The crystalline structures act as conduits for a type of collective consciousness. Those exposed become part of a networked intelligence that overwrites their individual will. An attempt to force evolution through artificial means," James added, stepping forward. "But the process is unstable. The transformed subjects show increasing signs of deterioration over time. The colonies weren't just testing grounds, they were failed experiments." The council chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. An Earth admiral leaned forward, his expression grave. "And you're certain there are more facilities producing these weapons?" Commander Voss's final words confirmed it, Naira replied. "We've identified 3 potential locations based on energy signatures matching those we encountered. But attacking them directly would be too risky." James activated a holographic display showing planetary defense grids. The resonance technology has already been integrated into several key military installations. A direct confrontation could trigger a cascade effect, potentially destabilizing entire regions of space. "Then what do you propose?" a Lasarian counselor asked, her silver eyes sharp with concern. James and Naira exchanged a glance, sharing a moment of silent communication before Naira spoke. "We propose a joint task force. Small, autonomous teams of humans and Lasarians working together to identify and neutralize these threats. The counter-resonance technique we discovered proves our species are stronger together than apart. Our differences are our strength," James continued. "The conspirators tried to force uniformity, to erase what makes us unique. But it was human ingenuity combined with Lasarian knowledge that found their weakness." The council chambers fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, the Earth Admiral spoke again. "And you too would lead this task force?" "We've already proven we work well together," James said, carefully keeping his tone professional despite the way Naira's presence beside him sent electricity through his nerves. "There's another matter," Naira added, her voice taking on a more personal tone. "The prolonged exposure to the resonance energy during our battle has had unexpected effects." The medical scans appeared on the central display, complex readings that showed subtle but significant changes in both their cellular structures. Not the crystalline transformation that had afflicted Voss and his soldiers, but something else entirely. The counter-resonance created a unique energy pattern, James explained. Our exposure to it has altered us at a quantum level. We're still human and Lasarian, but our biology has become compatible in ways that weren't possible before. The implications weren't lost on the Council. The impossible barrier between their species, the fundamental incompatibility that had always kept their peoples somewhat distant, had been bridged, at least in their case. A sign, perhaps, an elderly Lasarian counselor mused, that the path forward lies not in forced evolution, but in willing cooperation. The Council's deliberations lasted hours, but in the end, they approved the task force. As James and Naira left the chamber, they found themselves alone in one of the station's observation lounges, Earth and stars spread out before them. So, James said softly, turning to face her. Compatible, huh? Naira's smile held both mischief and tenderness. Indeed. Though I suspect you knew that before the medical scans confirmed it. There's been something between us since that first firefight. Probably not the most romantic way to meet, he chuckled, reaching out to trace the iridescent patterns on her hand. I don't know, she replied, intertwining her fingers with his. There's something to be said for discovering your perfect match while saving the galaxy. Their laughter faded into comfortable silence as they gazed out at the stars. The task ahead was daunting, hunting down conspiracy cells, preventing the spread of the resonance weapons, and protecting both their peoples. But they had proven that the greatest strength came not from forcing change, but from embracing differences and finding harmony in diversity. You know, James said thoughtfully, they say the best partnerships are forged in fire. Naira's silver eyes met his, filled with warmth and promise. Then we should be excellent together, Commander Hawthorne. We've certainly seen enough fire. That we have, General Velos. He drew her closer, their foreheads touching in an intimate gesture that bridged their different cultures. That we have. As they stood together, their subtle biological changes resonating in harmony, they represented something new in the galaxy, not a forced evolution, but a natural bridge between two peoples. Their story would become legend in both their cultures, proof that the greatest advances come not from domination, but from connection, trust, and love. The stars seemed to shine brighter as they sealed their future with a kiss, their unique resonance creating patterns of light that danced across their skin. They had started as opponents, become allies, and now stood as something more, pioneers of a new kind of partnership between their peoples, protectors of both their worlds, and proof that the heart's evolution could not be forced or controlled, only discovered through courage, trust, and the willingness to take that first step into the unknown together.